Rodney Mason and I'm Mike Justice, and we're two pastors here in Georgetown. And we've been talking the last few weeks, ever since all the stuff's been going on in the U.S. and around the world now with race relations and all this. And we want to do all we can to help eradicate racism at every level. And we realize that it's bigger than us, but we've got to do what we can do to get done what we can do with it. And we actually, this is our second attempt at a video. We tried one last week and it didn't work out with the volume. We had a great time and it worked out really well, and then we found out there was no volume on the camera. So this is take two. So if you hear us, kind of, I guess, argue back to a further earlier point or talk back to an earlier point, we'll try and catch you up, that kind of thing. But I realized in the process, and thankfully, you've helped me a lot about giving me some resources. I watched Just Mercy and the Hate U Give, and I'm in the process of watching yet another movie that really have helped me to open my eyes about racism, but even for me, even more importantly, the idea of white privilege. I think it's one of those things for me, I didn't realize I had it because I was in it.
Yeah.
And I don't think, unless you're being spoiled by privilege, I think you realize then because you're taking advantage of it.
Right.
And I think there are some people that realize it and take advantage of it. That's part of the problem.
Right.
And so I think my eyes were open. The scales have fallen off my eyes to it. And so I need to figure out, how do I use, one, my calling as a Christian, two, my calling as a pastor, my calling as a white Christian pastor, and then the other offices or responsibilities that I have as a dad, as a husband, as a chaplain with law enforcement. How do I use those offices, and what are my responsibilities in those, and the white privilege I guess I get in those that is given to me not by anything I've done, but just because of who I am. How do I use that to help get rid of racism? And I think we're fortunate in Georgetown. And you can correct me, because obviously if I'm not involved in racism and it's not happening to me, I don't realize it, similar to white privilege. But let's talk about the racism in Georgetown and what I can do as a white pastor to help and to eradicate racism. And not just, I guess not just personal racism, but also systemic racism as well.
Yeah, and thank you, Pastor Mike, for this opportunity. And I think it's important for us to understand that racism, systemic, overt, covert racism, looks different in every place that you go to.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that has been heartbreaking for me in this movement that we have is that people have had the cookie cutter response to racism.
Yeah.
Where maybe in Mississippi, we'll take Mississippi for example. They still had the rebel flag was on their state flag. Well, that's not what we have to deal with, and so we have to be careful of trying to cookie cut our response. And so the first thing that I would say to any individual is first begin to educate yourself.
Yeah.
Begin to look at systems and see them for what they are or for what they aren't. I speak from the side of education. There are still a big deficit between a African American student that sits in a classroom and his white counterpart. There are, and this is data that I'm not making up. You can pull the CATS testing, and you will see that there's a huge gap in between the education. There's a huge gap when we start looking at how many kids that are of color who might be in special ed. Because of they learn different, they act a little different. We said this a little bit last time. People are going to see throughout this video that I'm constantly moving my hands. Where Brother Mike is, he's going to sit there, beside, so he might give you one every, and so that could be confused if we were in a classroom. By a teacher as, okay, here Rodney is, he's got to be hyperactive, he's got to be ADHD or ADD or OCD or what, all those titles that you could put on us, when in reality we learn. I tell people my mother was world renowned at talking with her hands. You know, if you tied her hands down, I don't even know if my mom could talk. I don't know if the two, you know, they were simultaneously. It's even interesting, you know, right before she passed, we knew that my mother was doing better is because she was in the hospital at UK, and they actually had to shackle her arms down because she was moving so much. Her IVs kept on coming out, and so it's a learned response. You know, we speak, we're loud.
Yeah.
And most of the time, you know, there's a few of us out there, a few of my white brothers and sisters out there that are loud, but potentially, you know, when you have a house full of, you know, when I grew up, it was 5 of us. And so you had to fight for airtime. You had to, you know, and so it's one of those things. And so when we look at Georgetown, we have to start looking at things we normally would not look at. For instance, you know, when we look at city council, how many African Americans are on city council?
How many are?
None right now.
Exactly.
So there's currently none. There's one young lady that she's my church member. This is not a plug for her. That is running for city council this next time. A friend of mine, a pastor friend of mine, ran the last time and did not get on there because, you know, I think there's not a good integration of the good old boy system. You know, where, you know, we really don't know him. Probably if he was to run this time, it would be a little bit better because now he coaches football out to Scott County High School. And so, you know, it's that slow integration into the good old boy system instead of looking and saying, you know what, I believe churches, I believe schools, I believe businesses should resemble the community that they're in.
Yeah.
So if we here in Scott County make up, and I can't remember what the percentage is of African Americans that are in Scott County, I want to say it's like 9 to 12% somewhere in that window.
I think it's about right.
Yeah. So at least one person of color should be part of the movement if we're really about diversity.
Right.
If we're really about
true.
Yeah.
And I think there probably needs to be some other than Caucasian.
Yes.
We have a large Hispanic
yes.
community
Yes,
that needs
yes,
to be represented,
yes.
and there's some Asian in Georgetown that needs to be represented. I think we've got to have more diversity.
We do
at the top levels.
Yeah, and because when you begin to do that, you begin to hear the voice of the community. Because many times when I sit down and make policies, let's say that all I do is hang around African American people. Then I never hear, like I think I've said it in the last one that we did, and I told people, I never heard the word white privilege until I started getting in conversation with my white brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, go read the book White Frugality. And I'm like, why am I going to read a book called White Frugality? Well, that book has really opened up my mindset.
Yeah.
You know, and so there it was. I would have never came across Robin DiAngelo's book. I would have never heard the word white privilege if I was not I had the opportunity to not only be an educator to my white brothers and sisters, but also be educated. I think it's a both thing, and I think we sometimes miss that because when I hear people talk about white privilege, it's like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, I got white privilege. God forgive me, please. You know, no, let me. No. I don't need you to get rid of white privilege. I need you to first realize that it exists, and then say to yourself, how can I benefit not only the black community, but community in general? Right. You know, if we're going to push the All Lives Matter, which, you know, we hear that a lot, and we really believe that, then I got to get to know other individuals and then here's how I tell people to me, white privilege is this. There are people that I know that come to Pastor Mike's church. They see me as Coach Mason, they see me as Mr. Mason, they might even see me as a truancy officer. But they don't see me as the spiritual shepherd of their soul. And so I can speak life into them from a spiritual viewpoint that might not be receptive, but if Pastor Mike speaks the same, that's their pastor. Yeah. And so that privilege, that pastoral privilege that he has, he can do even though we're both pastors. And the same for me. There's things I can say to my membership that if you were to come to my church and say it, they would look at you like, who is this? Like, what?
Who are you?
Like, excuse me, you not my pastor. And so I think that's what white privilege does, is it allows us to take conversation to places like, even with this video that we're doing today, there are going to be people that are going to see Pastor Mike Justice's name associated with it, who instantly are going to get on and listen. They were like, that's my pastor, that's my friend, that's my brother in the ministry, where if it was just Rodney Mason's name on there, they would be like, somewhat known.
Exactly.
Yeah, or who is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what it is now we're giving each other opportunity as if to say that for me on the African American side, on the the minority side, there are going to be some people who are going to see Rodney Mason's name associated, who might have saw Mike Justice and be like, who's he? Who's he? Okay, whatever. And so I think that's what it is. It is that taking that what we have and using it for the betterment of our community. And I will say this, I know there's this thing out right now when people chant Black Lives Matter. There is a group called Black Lives Matter. When most people are chanting Black Lives Matter, they're not talking about the group, they're talking about the gospel.
Right.
I needed to just help somebody with that. When you hear
Explain
me,
that.
okay.
Explain
So what I mean by that
I agree.
is that for me, when you hear me chanting Black Lives Matter, or you see me wearing my Black Lives Matter shirt, I'm not talking about the group that was set up by a young lady who believes in Marxism, and there's some other things, and there's some ideologies that are not there. So I'm not talking about a group, and I'm talking about the gospel. The gospel teaches that God loves all people.
Exactly.
Including black people. And so I heard a good explanation of it today by a white young lady who talked about if we were all sitting at the table. We had a group of people sitting at the table, and one person, she called him Bob. She says, Bob doesn't have anything to eat. And Bob, after everybody's plate is full and they're about ready to eat, Bob says, hey, I'm hungry. And the other people at the table says, but we're hungry too. And then Bob says, I know you're hungry, but your opportunity to eat is better than mine. I love it. I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
We're not saying that everybody's life doesn't matter, but right now your plate looks a whole lot better than my plate looks.
Yeah.
And so what I'm asking you to do is that maybe somebody missed Bob, or somebody misses me because they weren't expecting me to come. So there's two things you can do. You can either get to the person who prepared the food and say, listen, we got one more person to feed. Or I can say, here, take some of mine. Right. And then the other people at the table, the other 9 people, I would say, here, take a little bit of mine, take a little bit of mine. And guess what? Now we all have maybe smaller plates, but everybody is eating. And so so equally, and so that's what I really liked about when she said that today, is because a lot of people confused when you hear us chanting after the courthouse on Sunday afternoon from 4 to 6, Black Lives Matter, and they're like, oh, it's that hate group. No, we're not saying that. We're not saying that at all. We're saying that as a black man in Georgetown, Kentucky, my life ought to matter. Right. Just like yours as a white man in Georgetown, Kentucky matter. And so we're not talking about a group. We're talking about the gospel. And that is why I tell people, even when I was preaching to my people yesterday, is that I said it's our responsibility as Christians to stand up and declare that, in the words of one of my favorite songs growing up, something just ain't right. So something's not right. Something's not right. It's systemic. There are things, and it is amazing to me how many individuals who sing of the love of Jesus don't live the love of Jesus. Yeah. Like it's I struggle with that because if all lives matter, and I say that to stop the Black Lives Matter, then Black lives are included in that. Yeah. And then, but when all lives matter, that means that I have to understand that Jesus could have came. All Jesus had to really do was show up. He didn't have to be born of a virgin. He didn't have to lay in a manger. Jesus could have stepped out of heaven, opened up the sky, and says, "Everybody saved," and went away. Everybody saved and went away. That's not what Jesus does. Jesus sets an example for us that to get what we believe, to get what we stand for, there must come some dying. Now we're talking about all lives matter, the life, but part of life, there's a death that comes with that. Yeah. And so when I'm trying to get my individual people that I'm talking to that will listen to me is to understand is that yes, for like insurance for everyone, when that came about under the Obama, I knew that was going to raise my insurance. Yeah. But how, as a Christian, can I say, hey, wait a minute. Yeah. Wait a minute.
It all matters as long as it doesn't affect my body.
Doesn't affect me. Yeah. As long as it doesn't make me uncomfortable. Yeah. Like, let's just go ahead and talk about it. Wearing masks. Yeah. I wear a mask pretty much everywhere I go. Yeah. Because why? It's not about what you're going to give to me. It's about what I can give to you. Right. And so I wear that mask. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's hot. We did our outdoor worship yesterday, and we asked everybody to wear a mask. And so there we were sitting in 90 plus heat with mask on. Whew. And only time I took mine off was when I got ready to preach. Yeah. You know, but it was one of those, as soon as the preaching was over, even though I was hot and sweaty and tired, I threw it back on, because that is what, when all lives matter, we do those things. We give up what we think is freedom so that everybody can be free. I want everybody to be COVID free. That's my goal, my prayer. I'm still praying that. And so for that to happen, there's some liberties I have to give up.
In fact, I've kind of termed it as, we don't have to just give up our rights. We have to give up our right to our rights.
Yes.
Even.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and say, if I'm going to be truly involved in the idea of all lives matter, I've got to give up my right to my rights as a white Christian pastor male. I mean, there's lots of levels there of privilege.
Right.
I mean, I'm fortunate. And so there's lots of levels of privilege there that I have to be willing to give up my rights to.
Right.
So that others can have rights as well.
Right.
And you know, with the all lives matter, Black Lives Matter, I can definitely say Black Lives Matter. And when I say it, people say, well, why don't you just say all lives matter? Well, for me, this is the group that's being hurt the most.
Yes.
We've talked about that.
Yes.
In my family, all justice lives matter, because
Yes.
we're justices.
Yes.
That's my last name.
Yeah.
And so all justice lives matter. But when one of us is hurting,
Yes.
I don't say justice lives matter.
Yes.
I say Drew's life matters,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Emily's life,
Yes.
matters, or
Yes.
Lois's.
Yeah.
You know, we
Right.
individualize it.
Right.
And
Right.
right now, when I say Black Lives Matter, I'm
Right.
not saying, oh, all those other lives don't
Yes.
matter.
Yes.
I'm wanting to amplify the one who needs it,
Yes.
to hear it
Yes.
the most right now.
Yeah.
And I think, and then correct me if I'm wrong again, okay? I think it helps if I were to say, with all this white privilege crap behind me, if I say Black Lives Matter and a black man hears that, it sounds a lot better than all lives matter. It
Yeah,
means
yeah,
more.
yeah,
It
yeah.
has more emphasis. It
Yeah.
has more effect.
Yes.
But saying it is good, but doing something with that is the whole thing. You know,
Yeah.
Paul said, faith without works is dead.
Yeah, yes,
So
yeah.
we've got to figure out, okay, I can say Black Lives Matter. I can say it all day long. What am I going to do about it?
Right.
What am I going to do about it?
Right,
And
right.
part of that goes back to
Right.
who's on city council.
Right.
Goes
Yes,
back
sir.
to
Yes, sir.
who's in leadership in places.
Yes, yes.
I think of our school board.
Yeah.
How many African Americans are on our school board right now? Maybe one.
Maybe one. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And we're talking how many students are represented there?
Yes.
And how many? And what's the proportion of race?
Right. Right.
Percentages
Right.
in all those?
Right.
And I think we need something better there.
Yes.
Because
yes.
one thing I've learned, and unfortunately, I tend to think everybody experiences everything the way I experience it. Therefore, if I'm in leadership and I'm affected by it a certain way, I'm gonna vote that direction to make my situation the best, because I think that's everybody's situation. At least I hope I think that.
Right.
And then sometimes, and this is where leadership kind of gets corrupted, I think. Sometimes somebody gets in leadership who thinks, I don't care if it affects you.
Right.
If it matters to me,
Right.
whether that hurts you or not, I'm going to vote for it, because I don't want to get less of what I want.
Right.
Even if that means you get less of what you need.
Right.
Big difference there.
Right.
And so I think one of the things we have to do is, and I love in the marches that we've had, really promoting get out and vote.
Yes.
Register to vote.
Yes.
Get out and vote.
Yes.
I loved that it took a whole week to figure out who got elected here.
Right.
Because there were so many people voting.
Right.
In a time when we had every reason not to go vote.
Right.
I mean, we have COVID going on everywhere.
Yeah.
You have to
That's
vote
right.
on
Yeah.
all the things. We had reduced number of places to go
Yes.
to, everything.
Yeah.
But we had record number of turnout.
Yes.
And I think that is a great sign
Yes.
for great change.
Yes. Yes.
And you know, I don't want to get into politics on
Right.
who were the ones that should got elected, that didn't or did or whatever. But I'm glad that people are voting.
Yes.
Because I think that's one of the forefront things we've got to do, is let people know every voice matters.
Yes.
When you vote.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, too many people think, I'm not going to vote. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What does my vote matter? It matters a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, when you look at on the McGrath Booker race, I mean, that's 10,000 people difference.
Right.
That's all it took.
Right.
And if 10,000 people would have, and really, it's 10,000, so if 5,000 would have voted differently to the other side, hey, you're top.
Yeah, yeah.
So that 10,000
Yeah.
vote swing is really 5,000 votes.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And so, if we get more people educated on your vote matters,
Yes,
I
yes.
think that begins
Yes.
the process of changing some of the systemic.
Yes, 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 yeah, yeah. And I think you're so right. And another movement, because I was thinking on the way over here, because I'm that pastor that learned how to exegete text, and then for me, so that I had that mental hanger, everything has to be the same letter. So I was like, well, if I was going to say three things, first one is be educated. Be educated. It's important for us to put ourselves in positions to be educated on both sides of the racial divide. Whether you're black or whether you're white or whether you're brown, is because like you said, there is this propensity inside of us to think that everybody in America has been through what I've been through in my 49 years, has done what I've done in my 49 years, and thinks like I think in my 49 years.
Exactly.
And that's not even the reality in my church.
No.
I have my brother William. We came up in the same house, but there was different movements within us. You could be twins and be similar face, but different space.
Yeah.
And so I think educate. And the next one is really empowerment. And so for me, so educate. Find out what needs to be taken care of. Stop looking at other people cookie cutter and say whatever they're doing over there, we're going to do here, and then find out what our issues are here. So let's be educated. Let's look at some of the flaws and fallacies that we have here, and then empowerment. One of the things that I want to see for all people is that those who think differently than the systems that are already there. Let's get them into position. The young ladies that are leading the marches.
Doing a great job.
Yeah, here in Georgetown, as long as you're over the age of 18, you can run for city council.
Right.
So one of the things, they haven't said yes or no, but one of the things we've been trying to plan in their mind is like, baby, run. Like, you have a vision, you are a visionary, and the only way that you change something is not just what you do in the streets, but what you do in the buildings.
I think it's always easier to change a system if you're in the system.
If you're in the system. And so that's one of the things that I think needs to really happen is empowerment to be able to say, yes, your vote matters. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing I hear people say all the time, well, there's no good candidates. Then guess what? That is God saying you go run.
Yeah.
Be a good candidate. Yeah, be a good candidate. You go be that person. I had someone stop by my house a couple of days ago who, a person on city council, brought my name up. Like, do you know Rodney? Yeah, I know him, blah, 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 blah. I've known him since a little kid. And so they never really would share what they were talking about, but this person came to me and says, listen, you're getting behind the walls of city council. Good. People are hearing you. And I was like, that's awesome. Like, I ain't worried about that. He said, well, run. You ought to run. You ought to run. And I said, here's my only problem. I hate meetings. You sort of got to I said, so I'm not the dude. But I know some individuals that's more of their movement. Yeah. That I can have their ear. And so one of the things that people who listen to this can do is put us in a position where we can meet somebody. Yeah. Like if you're good friends with the mayor,
use it.
Then use it. Say, hey mayor, I know this guy. So it's about empowerment. Empowerment simply looks like this, is once we are done with whatever we do, I'm better than what I was. Yeah. Like this is empowering to me right now.
Exactly.
Because guess what? Some people are going to hear Rodney Mason speak, and they're going to be like, okay, that's not what people have been telling me. Because, I've got the text messages and I've got the Facebook messages, I'm racist, I'm anti-Christian. I even been called a heretic. Oh yeah, I'm like, hey, I'm feeling pretty good about life. You know what I'm saying?
All the good leaders have been, right?
Yeah. So I got the trifecta going on. But then some people are going to be like, oh, now I hear his heart. I hear his heart. Yeah. And so by that, this is an empowering event for me. One of the things that I'm asking, individuals to do is that when you have that opportunity to educate, just because you have a bad student, don't mean you flunk them. You leave them there. You work harder with them. Yeah. It's the way that I understood it when I was teaching in the classroom. The kid that didn't get life skills, or when I used to teach typing classes, is that I would stay after school. And I would encourage that kid to stay after school, and I would call the parent and say, can they stay, can you come pick them up? They need the extra work, but what we're doing down is, well, you just don't want to listen. Well, sometimes what I've been doing is so ingrained in me that it's going to take a little bit more work. I've had clothes that I've washed that it only took one to wash to get. And then I had clothes when I used to clean porta potties. That was one of my jobs before God said, I'm gonna bless you, but that was one of the things. And so those outfits that I would clean porta potties with, they didn't come clean once or twice.
Yeah.
Like there was a couple of repetitive washings after letting them sit outside, you know, and so what it was, well, the uniform was important. Because, and so that person that we have is that we need to educate them so that now they can be empowered. Yeah. Some people don't see what we see because we just haven't taught them what we see. Yeah. And so I think empowerment of the community, and how do we empower Scott County? Well, we do it by putting people in position that are going to bring, you know, when I look at who I vote for city council, for instance, I'm not looking to vote for somebody who's been there, done that. Not saying that because you've been there, done that, you're not doing a good job. No. But if
you're not bringing fresh ideas,
you're not bringing fresh ideas. And so I want fresh eyes. I want fresh ideas. I want ideas that might be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Like I want an ideal that you say something to me that makes me go home and say, man, let me think about that. Let me chew on that for a few moments, because that sounds, well, no.
Maybe radical. Maybe a little different.
Well, let's try it.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that's what we do, is we have to empower, because anything that is not advancing is actually retreating. Some faster, some slower. You know, so if we're the same Georgetown in 2020 that we were in 2000, we're actually retreating.
We're behind.
We're behind. We're missing it. And so some of the things that we need to do is how do we go about empowering? And so I'm going to throw the question to you.
Okay.
When you think of empowerment of Scott County, what does that look like?
For me, I still go back to voting. I think it means that we've got to put people in right positions, and promoting the people who are most qualified to fill the positions.
Yes.
Not based on age, not based on sex, not based on race, not based on anything other than you're qualified.
Okay.
And helping people to become qualified.
That's good.
You know, and so if we have folks that we know has potential, we need to hone that potential in them.
Good.
And help them. I think that's what empowerment is. You take somebody behind you, and you help them come beside you.
That's good.
Then you don't just keep them beside you.
Yeah.
You even push them ahead of you.
Yes.
You know, and so it's that process. And empowering somebody is helping them to know what's in them. And bringing it out of them.
That's good.
So that they can become who it is. I mean, that's my Christian viewpoint.
Right.
Is God sent Jesus to save us so that we could be who it is He originally created us to be.
Yes, sir.
To hone that potential out of us in life. And so I think that's part of, for me, when I hear empowerment, it's helping somebody be to their fullest potential.
Yes.
Even if that means I've got to take second seat.
Or
third seat. Or maybe I'm not even on the bus.
You
know? And really right now, as I see it racially, the white guy's been driving the bus. And so now it's time for us to say, okay, let's reevaluate our seating. You know? And maybe we need to, let's level out the playing field. And let's help people to be who it is that God's created us to be. All people. Whether that's black, white, male, female, whatever.
Right.
That for me is what empowerment is helping somebody to develop the potential within them. And being able to willingly step aside. I think and I think part of it is I'm getting older. You know, as I get older, I realize my purpose right now is to mentor and bring up people. To go past. I hope that my ceiling is my kid's floor. You know what I mean? That where I stop is where they can start. And I want it for more than just my kids. I think if we're true to, if you're voted onto a city council, if you're on a school board, if you're in any kind of position of leadership, you ought to hope that you have set up your organization in such a way that when you leave, it becomes better. You know, that's what legacy is, right? It's not just having just like rooms named after you and junk like that. I mean, I don't care if there's ever a room named after me, right? Right. What I want is that I won't be. I've been pastor here for 10.5 years, right? I won't forever be the pastor here. That's a reality, right? Pastors come, pastors go. Right. By the grace of God, I've been here this long. But I hope that when I leave, this church is better than when I came.
Yes, sir.
And that it becomes better than when I left.
Yes, sir.
You know, that we're reaching more people and having more community impact now than we've ever had, but that it has more of a community impact and reaches more people in the future.
Yes, sir.
And that, for me, takes empowering people to do it.
Yes.
And I think part of that is understanding and helping them recognize their gifts and talents.
Yes, sir.
And saying, this is how God has made you specifically. And this is He has a purpose and a plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to help you fulfill that.
Yeah, that's good.
Through Him. That for me is what empowerment is.
That's good. And you said some interesting things. I taught a lesson about 2 years ago, and it changed my whole mentality. The question that came out of it, and I will throw it to those that will listen to this: are you living or leaving a legacy? And when you said legacy, I almost jumped and ran on that one right there. I was like, okay, he's stealing my thunder. Get him out of my notes, Jesus. But it is because to make a living means all I did was benefited me.
Yeah.
But to make a legacy does not focus on me, it focuses on those that come after me.
Yes.
Like I tell people now that I'm the pastor at Wesley, I thank God for every man and woman that stood before me.
Yeah.
They left me a legacy that when I get, I'm a track coach, as you can see, Georgetown Middle School track, and one of my favorite races is the relay races. Now, you can have a great runner start, but if you have your leg 2, 3, and 4 are not fast, even though you start off winning, you can lose.
Yeah.
What has to happen is that we might need to make sure that yes, number 1 might be your fastest runner, but 2, 3, and 4 can't be that slow.
Yeah.
And so what I do as a coach is that when I put a relay team together, you will always race each other. And you will always work out with each other. Because what we're building is a commonality that, yeah, 1 might not get faster, but 2, 3, and 4 gonna get faster because they're working out with 1. Yeah. Normally what we do is 1 goes off and plays by himself and does practice by himself at 2, 3, or 4, and all they have to do. And so 3 and 4 might get as fast as 2, but they're still not as fast as 1. And so one of the things about it is that the passing of the baton. Like for us, we received it from somebody, but we got to give it to somebody. And where are we going to position ourselves? And so when we look at a legacy I want to set up policies and procedures. I want to do things. I tell people I'm so adamant about Black Lives Matter and about eradicating racism because I don't want my grandkids, when they turn 49, to still be fighting the same fight. I don't want my daughter, who's 12, when she turns 49, to still be fighting the fight that her daddy fought.